Welcome back to the podcast that exists to enrich and inspire young Latinos.
Bienvenidos al podcast que existe para enriquecer e inspirar a jóvenes latinos. Bienvenidos a su programa La Alegría del Evangelio. Estamos aquí preparándonos para comenzar el año. Tenemos el día de hoy una invitada, Dayana Huerta, una de las líderes de Iskali. De parte de Vicente, bienvenidos.
Alrighty, hi guys, it's Leslie. How is everyone doing today?
Hey guys, it's Jay. Nice to be able to join you guys again. Thank you for being with us.
Hola a todos, yo soy Dayana y es un placer estar aquí con ustedes. Estoy muy emocionada.
Pues gracias. Hoy tendremos una conversación sobre, muchas veces cuando comenzamos el año, ¿verdad? Nos ponemos metas y quiero comenzar con el tema de las metas, ¿no? No es duda que muchos de las personas que nos están escuchando, muchos de nosotros, cada vez que comenzamos un año, nos ponemos metas literalmente y muchas veces que tienen que ver con nuestro físico, ¿no? Las membresías del gimnasio se suben como nada y gastamos miles de millones de dólares. Hoy en día el mercado para mejorar nuestro físico es el mercado quizás más grande después del mercado del entretenimiento. ¿Qué creen que dice sobre la cultura y sobre el mundo donde vivimos que el enfoque sea siempre en la apariencia física? No estoy diciendo que es malo, pero ¿qué creen que nos dice el hecho de que simplemente muchos de nosotros nos estamos enfocando en nuestras metas para el nuevo año y decir, pues me quiero ver mejor, and that's it? What do you guys think about that?
La verdad, no es nada mal querer, ir al gimnasio y sentirse mejor, pero el problema es que no, pues yo sé que yo lo he hecho antes, donde digo, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to start working out, but I'm not doing it to feel good. I'm doing it to look good. And, hay muchas cosas que, hay que hacer para mejorarse. Y el físico sí es una, pero no es toda. Y it's just so frustrating when you are you just keep seeing everyone trying to look good and you try to look like them because that's how you think you're going to kick off this year with a bang. But I mean, I don't know. It's frustrating. It's like a pressure to look good when it's no, there's other aspects of life that can be fixed. And bettered.
Yeah, I think it speaks a lot to our culture, and especially here in the U.S., that it's just about vanity, right? Like guys were saying, being healthy is great, and we should try to be healthy and if working out to improve our health or because we need to for medical reasons, then that's awesome. Like me personally, I do want to lose weight going into the new year, but because I gained 15 pounds this year, so I'm above where I should be at a healthy weight. So for me, it's not because I'm trying to get shredded and have a six-pack. It's just because I feel sluggish. And I know that I'm not at where I should be to be able to perform to my maximum capacity just on a daily, doing regular things. I feel sluggish. And so for me, it's yeah, if you're going to be vain, that's a bad thing. If you're working out just to be huge and to show off, if you're doing it to show off and getting things like plastic surgery and all that, that's unnecessary. But exercise and eating right, if you just want to be a healthy person, is awesome.
I spend a lot of time on social media, and I think that social media is one of the reasons that our culture is so focused on things like vanity rather than other aspects of yourself that you have to offer to the world, because there's a lot, but it's almost as if como que la sociedad no quiere que tú estés al tanto con tu valor que tienes que ofrecer para el mundo. Porque once you start to love yourself and to appreciate yourself and you get in touch with your own reality, I feel that's the times when people feel, or at least for me, that's whenever I'm in touch with my emotions and I'm feeling good about myself internally, not only externally, that's when I decide to raise my voice, do something to better the world as I try to better myself. So I think that it's a fight against what you know in your heart you should be doing versus what society wants you to do. And when you're stuck between the two, muchas veces caemos en el camino más fácil, que es el de la vanidad. It's harder for us to get in touch with our emotions, so we choose to just cover that up or instead work on our physique because we think that it will help us with the internal struggles that we're trying to ignore. And it's not popular. That's not something very popular in our culture. Todo el mundo te dice que debes de ser bonito por fuera y que debes de ignorar lo que está dentro o tapar lo que está dentro. It's something that I personally want to work on into the incoming new year.
Mírate bien y ya. En la cultura de parecer y no ser, ¿no? Eso es preocupante. O sea, con que parezca que soy lo mejor, si soy lo peor, no importa, ¿no? La cultura de parecer y no de ser. Pero creo que también hay otra cosa aquí, ¿no? Donde hay miles de personas, ¿verdad? Que están gastando, preocupándose por su imagen, ¿verdad? La cultura del Instagram, ¿verdad? Yo en una foto puedo ver tu cuerpo, pero no puedo ver tu espíritu, así que no te preocupes por tu espíritu, preocúpate por tu cuerpo, ¿no?
Yep.
Entonces, yo creo que también eso habla de dónde está la salud espiritual, ¿no? Hablamos de la salud corporal. Créanme, ustedes los que están viendo ahí, los que están viendo, no puedo evitarles decir que sí, tengo que bajar de peso. El cuerpo es el templo del Espíritu Santo, ¿verdad? No es malo ser saludable, pero a mí lo que me preocupa, y quiero hacer eco a lo que dijiste, Leslie, es de que vamos a hacer ejercicio para vernos bien, pero no nos importa nuestra salud. No, me voy a meter, inyectar, tomar lo que haga falta para verme bien, no importa que me muera un ataque al corazón, ¿no? Así que yo creo que también habla de lo poco que valoramos la salud espiritual. No creo que sea muy popular donde veamos de que alguien tenga metas de decir, ¿sabes qué? Este año voy a tomarme un momento para orar, para saber, para descubrir quién soy, cuál es mi propósito en mi vida, qué es lo más importante, qué es lo menos importante en mi vida, ¿no? Y yo creo que es preocupante vivir en un mundo donde todo el mundo se quiere ver bien, pero no todo el mundo quiere vivir bien.
Es más fácil mirarse bien que vivir bien, porque como estaba diciendo antes, nos da miedo enfrentar nuestros problemas internos y con ese mismo miedo, entonces es como nos convencemos nosotros mismos de decir, aunque yo me esté sintiendo mal por dentro, aunque yo tenga problemas en mi casa, I need to put on this persona of everything is going great because for different reasons. For example, muchos piensan que porque estamos en Iskali, porque estamos trabajando en comunidades y porque somos líderes de una organización de jóvenes católicos, que todo el tiempo tenemos que estar contentos y tenemos que estar bien espiritualmente. Y si alguien te ve triste por la calle, luego dicen, pero va a la iglesia. ¿Qué no que ir a la iglesia te hace muy contento y que te hace la vida más fácil? ¿Qué no Dios arregla todo? Entonces yo creo que a veces queremos mejorar por dentro, pero es difícil ser vulnerables. Entonces, al mismo tiempo que queremos mejorar, sentimos la presión social de que tenemos que siempre aparentar estar bien.
That's true.
Yeah, I think that society, especially here, doesn't value spiritual or mental health. I think mental health is starting to be talked about a little more, especially probably in 2020 because of the pandemic. But I also think spiritual health has to deal a lot with being alone. And I think for me personally, 2020 was a year that my spirituality could have gone down the drain because I couldn't go to church like I could before. I wasn't able to go to the Santissimo. I wasn't able to do all these prayer activities that I was used to doing. I was stuck at home. And at first it was like, wow, what am I supposed to do now? Like I can only look at the Santissimo through YouTube for so long before I like get bored. And now I want to look at my phone or I want to watch a show or I want to play a video game. And surprisingly enough, that didn't end up happening. Partially because things did start to reopen, but partially because I really tried to be intentional about praying, even when I was just home alone, bored, doing nothing. And I think for me, it's just like the relationship with God is something that people don't talk about. And it's not cool to talk about God, especially here. Like, you know, that's not something that you can just openly speak about with friends or family or coworkers. But I think that if people talked about that more, the vanity part would kind of start to fade. And then not only does your spiritual health get better, but your mental health gets better along with it. I think those two things are very hand in hand. Like I feel like you can't be good mentally and just have like a horrible spiritual life and vice versa.
I mean, I think all of this just goes into like, tenemos que reevaluarnos, y Diana mencionó algo sobre, like, tener que enfrentarte a tus problemas, y es algo difícil, y yo creo que por eso para mí, en lo personal, esto es algo que hace un año, recuerdo que estábamos terminando 2019, I was going into 2020, and I did the whole, okay, like, what am I doing for the new year, my New Year's resolutions, all that stuff. And I remember going on social media when I was like super obsessed and just obsessing over everyone else's lives and everyone else's problems, because I think a big thing is fixing other people's problems like as if they were your own. And I realized that I started off 2020 with trying to fix things of me that were not broken, but because other people were like, oh, this is lacking in me, I think I need to fix it. And that is why I think the pandemic and quarantine specifically was a great reset, at least for me personally, because it was a pause where I said, okay, Leslie, what is lacking? And spiritual life for me was something that was not maybe lacking, but it was just not working for me. So to have that pause, it allowed me to really like build up like what are the habits that I want to continue and start. And after, eventually, things opened up a little more. I went back to work and those habits stuck. Not just spiritual, life was affected, every aspect of my life. Yeah, some things fell through, but a lot of great habits stayed. So yeah, and Diana said it the best. It's very hard to sit there and face your issues. And I remember I didn't want to face mine. So because I didn't want to face them, I made other people's issues my personal issues, which is not the healthiest.
Y creo que en el tema de ponernos metas, yo creo que es importante ser balanceados, ¿no?
Sí.
Yo creo que sí es importante cuidar nuestro cuerpo como templo. Yo creo que también es importante la oración. Y me llama la atención lo que tú dijiste, Jay, que en la pandemia, cuando no se podía ir a misa y cosas así, como que dijiste, pues ahora mi espiritualidad se va al carajo, y pues era la expectativa, ¿no? Pero que después empiezas a tener como hábitos de oración. Y yo sí quiero hacer un enfoque en esto, ¿no? Que cuando hablamos de espiritualidad, especialmente para todas las personas que nos están escuchando, es muy difícil verdaderamente encontrar personas que auténticamente vivan y tengan una relación intencional, personal e íntima con Dios, ¿no? Mi preocupación es que hay muchos que van a misa y están tibios. Es lo que hacen. Van a misa y dar limosna, ¿no? Pero yo creo que cuando estamos hablando de vida espiritual va más allá. Fuiste creado para algo que estás llamado a cumplir de la mano de Dios, ¿no? Y yo creo que es algo de lo que no hablamos. Es algo de que tenemos ahí abandonado, ¿no? Y yo creo que sí, el comenzar de un año debería ser un propósito. Personalmente, para mí este año es de una manera especial. Es decir, bueno, Vicente, pues ¿para qué estás hecho? ¿Para qué viniste? ¿Y cómo estás cumpliendo tu vocación? Y yo creo que eso es parte de la vida espiritual, ¿no? Y si no hago yo esto de la mano de Dios, si no busco, ¿verdad?, mi vocación de la mano de Dios, voy a terminar haciendo cualquier cosa, ¿no? Voy a terminar creyendo que mi trabajo es mi vocación y para eso nací, ¿no? Y nos perdemos, ¿no? Y yo creo que hay allá afuera un gran vacío, ¿no? Personas que cuando tengas este carro vas a ser feliz. Y te compras el carro y te das cuenta que no eres feliz. Que sí, que el carro te sirve para ir a trabajar, que el carro te sirve cuando está haciendo frío, especialmente aquí en Chicago, pero no eres feliz, ¿no? Estamos en busca de cosas que creemos, ¿verdad?, que nos van a llevar a la felicidad. Cuando estaba en la secundaria yo decía, cuando tenga $1,000 en el banco, no tengo de qué preocuparme, porque ya, si me para la policía, tengo con qué pagar los tickets, estoy bien. Entonces, llegué a tener $1,000 en el banco y después había otra necesidad, ¿no? Entonces, estamos en busca de cosas que creemos que nos van a hacer felices, sin darnos cuenta que tenemos a veces que parar y decir, bueno, en realidad, ¿qué es lo que buscamos a largo plazo? ¿Qué es lo que queremos lograr con nuestra vida, no? Y nos pasa, estaba teniendo una conversación con alguien que tiene 5 o 6 años involucrado y su vida no ha cambiado, ¿no? Y de lo que tú decías, Dayana, ¿no? Que muchas veces sí estás involucrado en la escuela, en la iglesia, en un grupo de jóvenes y tu vida no cambia. No, tu vida cambia con decisiones, ¿no? Y si Dios, ¿verdad? Hay gente que me dice, yo miré a Dios y digo, ¿y tu vida cambió? No, miraste otra cosa, pero no miraste a Dios.
Pero no era Dios.
Porque cuando se tiene un encuentro personal con Dios, tu vida se transforma. Y se transforma porque empiezas a tomar decisiones diferentes, ¿no? Entonces yo creo que al comenzar este año hay trabajo para hacer, para buscar nuestro propósito, para los que estamos aquí también revisar cómo está nuestra relación con Dios de una manera auténtica y también mirar cómo estamos tomando nuestras decisiones, ¿no? Porque a veces sí, yo tuve mi encuentro con Dios, pero de repente empiezo a tomar decisiones que no están fundamentadas en algo que me va a dar felicidad, ¿no? Y muchas veces terminamos haciendo cosas que no nos hacen felices. No sé si tienen algo que responder o decir sobre eso.
Me gusta que dijiste decisiones, porque creo que es muy fácil dejarte llevar con este momento. Todos en ese momento donde dicen, like, vi a Dios, y luego, sí, no cambia nada. Y personas piensan, porque vi a Dios, tengo que tomar una decisión, y esa una decisión es la que ya me cambió la vida, y la verdad, no. Y ese es el problema que yo, la verdad, sigo teniendo, y yo creo que siempre voy a tener de las decisiones pequeñas. Y yo sé que para mí, en lo personal, like 2021, my kind of goal is not one big goal. It's gonna incorporate little goals. That, yes, I'm gonna choose to, work with this podcast and keep, doing my daily prayers and stuff for la comunidad de consagrados. But it's also a lot of other little decisions and little choices that I have to make multiple times a day that also incorporate a lot. So yeah, maybe you can like join a youth group and that's like your one big decision that you made. But at the end of the day, like that's not the one thing that's going to really impact and change your life. That's one event that can change your life. But it's a lot of the smaller decisions that you're going to make along the way that are truly going to make the biggest change.
Yeah, I think that as young people, we struggle a lot with wanting to make all these things happen. I know I do for sure. Like I say that I want to make this and that happen, but I don't actually do anything. And because I just feel like it's so unattainable and it's so hard and like, it's going to take years to do that. And like, I won't even start. And that's where I think that's like where we're messing up, right? We don't even bother to try because we just think it's too hard. I think an example of that is, like you were saying, a relationship with God. A relationship with anybody is hard to do, to be good friends with anyone is really hard. And I feel like I always thought a relationship with God was hard because we can't see him like I can see you guys, and it's not the same. It's hard enough to build a relationship with somebody you can see, even harder with somebody that you can't see. I think trusting God is one of like the hardest things that we can learn to do. But I think it's really a key to living a happy life and to trusting that to whatever decisions you make, they'll work out if you trust that God is going to help you make them work, right? I think for me in 2020, I remember at the beginning of the year, I was doing Exodus 90 and we had to make a list of like things that were our goals for why we were doing Exodus. And one of my goals was that I wanted to trust God with just like anything, right? I wanted to just be able to be like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to trust you and I'm going to hope that like I'm doing the right thing and I'm just going to see where it goes. And throughout the 90-day process, there was a day where I was reading some Bible verses and then I remember like the reflection that I read after the verses was talking about praying for God to kind of break you so that then he can then rebuild you and mold you into what you're supposed to be. And I remember thinking like, I should pray for God to break me. But I was like, no, that's scary. Like, what if he actually does it? Like, I don't want him to break me. And I was like, whatever, I'm just going to do it. So I'm like sitting there in the Santissima, right? And I'm like, God, I don't know if I should be asking you this, but I want you to break me. And I don't know how you're going to do it, but I want you to break me. But then I want you to give me the strength and know that you're going to help me to build myself back up. And, weeks passed and I was just like, okay, well, I guess we'll just see what happens, right? And then my mom died and that broke me. Like you guys can imagine, and I was like, well, damn, like, was I asking for this? And then like it took weeks, months for me to realize like, well, I guess what I asked for happened, but I did come out stronger after it. And like since then, I've had so much spiritual growth and my relationship with God is amazing, like to a point where I never thought it would be. And I remember just last week talking to a friend about it. And he was telling me, he's like, I'm honestly surprised that you're still so involved in what you're involved in because of what happened to you. Like if you had, and this friend was a priest, by the way. So he was like, if you had been mad and like stopped coming to mass, I would not have blamed you. Like I would have understood. I would have gone to try to bring you back, but I would have understood why you would have left, right? Why you would have felt angry at God or angry at the world or whatever. And I was like, yeah, well, I think for whatever reason, things happened the way that they happened and my relationship with God, instead of crumbling, skyrocketed this year. And I trust God more than I ever have, like, more than I trust even my closest friends here, because I know that God is never going to fail me. And whatever struggles he puts in my path, he knows that I'm going to get over, right? That's something that we say a lot, that that God is going to put something in front of you but because he knows you can get over it and you can overcome it. And I think that being okay with letting God build you up is something that a lot of people aren't willing to accept and aren't willing to be like, okay, break me, because it's scary. And I think that the reason I look forward now to this new year is because the breaking and the rebuilding already happened. It's done. Now it's what's next. Like you were saying, what's my purpose in life? So now I'm comfortable with where I am, but now I know that I'm made for more, right? God made me for more than just working at a bank and, volunteering at church. I think that I'm called to do more, and I believe that God wants me to make a change in the world. And I don't know how that's going to happen. But like you said, Leslie, it starts with little decisions that we make on the daily basis of, I'm going to go and I'm going to record this podcast today. I'm going to go and I'm going to pray this rosary. I'm going to go, I'm going to visit this friend that I know is struggling. And it's like that we gradually make an enormous change.
I think that the reason your question was about finding happiness. And I think that the reason that so many people can't find happiness is because we just don't know what that is. We don't understand what that looks like or what happiness truly is. And ever since I had my encounter with God, I have said multiple times, it's like my punchline at this point, it's my catchphrase, that I had no idea that I had something missing until I ended up finding it, is when I realized it. Ever since I encountered God, I realized, okay, this is happiness. But what does that look like en el mundo en el que yo vivo? Because God is happiness, but how can I make that a goal for myself? To find happiness, I feel like I need to understand what that looks like for me and how I can work towards it on a day-to-day basis. And cuando empezó la pandemia, we didn't have a lot of information about it at first, and we went into quarantine, all of us scared, because it felt like death was knocking on our front door. You could get sick from anybody at any moment, and it was so lethal that si te tocaba, pues te tocaba y te llevaba el coronavirus. And I think a few weeks into quarantine, I kind of had that realization of, I could die one of these days, nomás por salir a comprar un mandado, or por hacer un errand, o por ir a trabajar, because some of us kept working throughout quarantine. Cualquier cosita ahorita me puedo enfermar y pues me voy de este planeta. So what am I going to do with the time I have here? Because I don't know how much time it is or how much time, it's going to be. Yo misma comprendí that for me, happiness is the kingdom of heaven. So I said, God, if I'm going to go due to COVID, because I don't know if I will or not, what am I going to do with my time here to ensure that I can reach that happiness whenever the time comes? And I started doing this thing I called it making points in heaven. What I invested my time into, I said, I need to start making points in heaven so that I can walk up to the kingdom, to the doors one day, como la lectura de los talentos, cuando el muchacho tiene estos talentos que ocultó y que no hizo nada con ellos por quedárselos. Todos tenemos virtudes y todos tenemos cosas en las que podemos invertir nuestro tiempo, nuestros talentos. And are we doing them? Like, are we trying to make points in heaven and like reach that ultimate happiness that we're all going to reach hopefully one day? And as soon as I came to that realization that that's what I wanted for myself and that's what I wanted to start working towards, it's when my quarantine, and I think my life overall, started to have a lot more meaning, because I was spending my time not sitting in my room crying that I couldn't go out, I was spending my time volunteering, doing things not just for myself, but doing things for other people, to try to help other people. Y en el proceso de ayudar a los demás es como yo encontraba una felicidad interna, and the way that I found was helping me cope with the situation that I was going through. So I think that we can't find something unless we actually know what we're looking for. Y yo creo que el mundo anhela tener una relación con Dios, and the world is like, le está gritando a los vientos que necesita a Dios y que quieren a Dios, and that they want to feel like ese calor que Dios nos da, but they don't know what it is yet. And it's up to us, people who have had that encounter with Christ and who do know the love of God, to show these people who don't know yet what it is that they're actually looking for. Because before knowing God, I really, really felt like I was searching for something. And maybe at the time, I thought that it was something earthly, algo que podía así tocar con las manos, algo que tuviera un valor de dinero, un valor materialista. And that wasn't it at all. like lo que estaba buscando, it was so much bigger than me, and it was so much bigger than anything I could ever wrap my head around. Y hasta hoy en día todavía no lo he logrado entender, because none of us can really ever comprehend God's love for us, but I have a better idea of what it is now. So I think that once we all find what happiness is and understand that, God is love, God is the way, God is life, God is happiness, then I think that we can start setting ourselves up for a path in which we start taking steps in our day-to-day life to reach that ultimate happiness.
Thank you, everybody, for sharing. That was good. Jade, especially thank you to you. Thank you for sharing the experience of losing your mother with all of us. That's I know it's very intimate, and thank you for sharing. Diana, Leslie, very, very good thoughts. React to this. Yes, I have God, but I still have excuses. Ay, les dolió, ¿verdad?
God doesn't need excuses.
And this is the reason why I'm saying this. And I want to make you uncomfortable. I want to make myself uncomfortable, because we all know people that claim that have encountered God, even us sometimes, ¿verdad? Tenemos a Dios, pero seguimos teniendo excusas, ¿verdad? Tenemos metas, pero seguimos teniendo excusas. Queremos lograr un cambio, pero seguimos teniendo excusas. Queremos lograr algo, pero seguimos teniendo excusas. Queremos ser algo, pero seguimos teniendo excusas. Entonces, ¿qué pasa cuando nos convertimos en conozco a Dios, pero quiero hacer esto, pero nos convertimos en mis espero, en Mr. Pero, en mis excuse, my name is Pero, and my last name is excusas, ¿verdad? Porque le ponemos un pero a todo y le tenemos una excusa a cada cosa, una excusa perfecta. And that's troubling, right? Because a lot of people, a lot of us are going to start this new year with saying, this is the year we survived 2020. I survived COVID, ¿verdad? Ya sobreviví COVID. Ahora sí, agárrate, mundo, porque ahí te voy con todas las fuerzas. But then I wake up. I don't want, I'm like, I'll do it tomorrow. Should I eat healthy? Oh, I'll do that tomorrow. I'm going to sleep an extra hour. Let me open Instagram and spend 2 hours there doing nothing. Should I go to this meeting? No, I'm just going to cancel it. Should I go to the gym? Should I go running? Not really. Today you're supposed to pray. I'll do that tomorrow. So we have all these good intentions, yet excuses are strong. They are deep. Nos tienen bien agarraditos. So how do we break these attitudes? ¿Cómo quebramos estas actitudes de sí, conozco a Dios, sí sé lo que quiero lograr, pero, ay, Dios mío, tengo las excusas perfectas para todo, ¿no? Tenías que leer este libro, no lo leíste. Oh, I have the excuse. Tengo la excusa perfecta. Tenías que ir a esta reunión, no fuiste, teniendo la excusa perfecta. Tenías que hacer esto, no. That's dangerous. That's very dangerous. I mean, y digo esto porque I have found myself doing that, right? Like, I didn't do something and I'm like, okay, I know what I'm going to say. I'm going to send an email and, voy a pintar la historia perfecta de fracaso para que me perdonen mi tarea, ¿no? ¿Sabe qué, maestra? Se murió la amiga de mi amigo, de mi tío, del sobrino de el amigo de una persona que no conozco. But it broke me. So, what happens when we become these grandes metas, gran amor a Dios? Nuestra vida no cambia y seguimos siendo Mr. Excusa and Mrs. Excusa. How do you break out of that?
We're scared to be uncomfortable.
Boom.
Yes. Tenemos miedo de estar incómodos. Esa es la razón por la que continuamos teniendo excusas, porque antes de que yo conociera a Dios y tuviera una relación con Dios, yo me sentía cómoda en mi mundo diario de viviendo una vida no siguiendo, el camino que Dios quiere para mí. Y las cosas de la iglesia, las cosas de Dios, la fe, me hacía sentir incómoda. Entonces, cuando me di la oportunidad de estar incómoda por 3 días en un retiro, me di esa oportunidad, entonces las cosas cambiaron. Estar en la iglesia y estar con Dios y tener una vida espiritual, ahí es donde encuentro mi comfort zone. That's where I feel at home and I feel safe. Y ahora el mundo es el que me hace sentir incómodo. Y ahora me da miedo salir y platicar con personas que no creen en Dios, que me sacan argumentos sobre la iglesia y que están en contra de las cosas en las que yo creo. Entonces, para mí los papeles cambiaron drásticamente y sometimes I find myself struggling with evangelizing in the world because the world now makes me uncomfortable. Lo decimos mucho aquí en Iskali, que el mundo no lo vamos a cambiar dentro de la iglesia. Like, no vamos a hacer nada dentro de la iglesia porque los problemas existen allá afuera. Like, tenemos que salir afuera y salir al mundo si de veras queremos hacer un impacto. But we don't like to be uncomfortable. A lo mejor ya sabemos cuál es nuestra misión, pero we still have that little tiny string that we want to be in control of and that we want to keep tugging on. Y no le queremos dar las riendas todas a Dios because we don't know what's going to happen. Así como contaba Jay sobre su mamá, it takes a lot of courage to ask God to break you. Like, it really takes a very strong character and very strong trust in God to say, God, just break me into pieces, because you don't know what that's going to look like. That's the reason why I feel even this deep into my relationship with God, I feel like I haven't fully done that myself either, because I'm scared to be uncomfortable again, because I know how scary it was the first time that I decided to be uncomfortable. Y aunque ese fue un fruto bonito, el discomfort me trajo un fruto muy bonito que fue mi relación con Dios, I don't know if that's going to be the case every single time. And now that I know what God is capable of in my life, even though I know it's going to be something good, I'm scared that the process is going to be too much for me to handle. So sometimes I still hold on to my rope and I still hold on to my, no le quiero dar todo el control a Dios. Yo quiero quedarme con un pedacito de control.
I think it's about wanting it badly enough, and whatever that is, right? Like, it can be happiness, or it can be, wanting to have a specific career or wanting a relationship with somebody. Like you said, Vicente, we have excuses of like, oh man, I want to be in better physical shape, but I don't want to go to the gym. And it has to be like your mentality. And I think that, like, for me, that's where I struggle the most, because there's, like I was saying earlier, there's a lot of things I want to do, and like being physically fit is one of them. And then I'll get up and I'll be like, oh, I'm just going to go play video games instead of going to run 2 miles, because that's like so much work, right? But then there's times where I do want things bad enough, and then I do them, right? Like finding a new job a little over a year ago, I was like, you know what? It's time for me to like switch from this job. I know I want something better. And then so I actually started to look, and I feel like that's where people stop, is like they say that they want to do something, but then when it comes time to make that first decision where you start is where you don't do it. And it all just comes down to how much you want something and how badly you want it. That's much easier said than done. It's really hard to actually start doing things. And I think especially like when it comes to a relationship with God, realistically, I think one of those huge things is the devil, right? I mean, he's walking around and he's trying to see who he can pull to him, right? A lot of people say that the devil just roams around the earth and he's just trying to, bring people down with him. And he's basically got us, right? And it's like, do you want to be free? Okay, well then do something. And God gives us the tools, to be able to have a relationship with him. I feel like God loves us no matter what, right? We know that. And God wants us to love him back, and he gives us the free will to decide whether or not we want to love him back. But he gives us the tools to be able to show him how much we love him, right? He gives us Mass. He gives us the communion. He gives us all the sacraments. He gives us the rosary. He gives us what we need to be able to reach that goal of having a great relationship with him. It's just a matter of, do you want it bad enough? Okay, well then here you go. This is what you need to do. It might take years for you. It might take decades. But eventually, like you said, Diana, you're going to get to that happiness of being with God someday. And I feel that for me, that's like my end goal in life, right? Like, what I want to do in life is great, but my end goal has to be, and is, like, I want to be with God at the end of my mortal life, right? I want to spend eternity with God. And because I've already told myself that, now whatever decisions I take here have to set me towards that goal. And if they don't, then I know that it's doing the wrong decision, and I'm making the wrong decision. So I feel like as long as you just love and you trust God enough, that's the first step. Now you have to want whatever you want badly enough, and then you're just going to start working for it.
Los estoy escuchando los dos y me puse a pensar, ay, Leslie, ¿cuántas excusas pones? Porque yo soy buena para poner excusas para todo. And most of the times that I put an excuse, it's because I am full of fear. Because of one, I don't have the faith. I don't trust you. I don't have that trust like built in you or in myself, mostly myself. Or two, I am scared because I know it's going to be hard, and I am scared of failing. Like, I think that is a big thing that I've realized this year, that a lot of the excuses that I put in front of myself, like I just put as a cover up, or because I'm terrified of failing. Y es, en vez de intentarlo, a mí se me hace más fácil decir, no pude hacer esto porque esta cosa, porque sabía que si lo hubiera hecho iba a ser muy difícil, porque es algo que nunca había hecho antes. Y hay la 50% probabilidad que no le iba a hacer bien, no iba a salir. Hay 50 que sí me sale, pero no me voy a arriesgar. I mean, many things this year. Like I said, I was like, oh yeah, like I'm going to lose 10 pounds and I'm going to do this. And once, like, I was motivated for like a week working out. And then after a week, I was like, oh my God, what if I don't lose the 10 pounds? What if I only lose 8 pounds? Not 10, just 8. Like, screw the 8 that I just lost because of those 2 that I didn't. I'm like, no, I can't do it. I can't go through with it. I am so scared of failing. And I think a lot of people are like, yeah, the lack of faith in myself and lack of faith in others is part of it. But I think for me personally, it's definitely the fear of failing. It's scary to fail porque te pones like cara a cara en algún defecto que tienes. And los defectos no son cosas malas porque al final del día es nada más una área de nosotros que tenemos que mejorar. That gives us a chance for improvement. But it's hard to think of it that way. I know for myself, that's why I put so many excuses.
The reason I mentioned this is because I think everybody wants to have a better life. Everybody. Yeah. You know, if you talk to anybody that might have many troubles, many battles, if you talk to them, they kind of have an idea of how to be better or what they want, right? And if you go deeper, you will notice that they have an excuse for everything. And I think this is important. I think as we begin the year, a lot of us are going to begin, yes, I'm going to do it. And then, bam, we're going to find ourselves encontrando las excusas. And I think you need to start thinking about this. Like, okay, you know, the day that you want to go run and you don't run, what are you going to do? And another thing that I was thinking is our cell phone, you know? Sometimes when my screen time is 4 hours, I'm like, oh my God, I did it. It went down to 4 hours. 4 por 7, 28 horas a la semana. Imagínate si I work out 28 hours a week. No manches, no cupieran esa puerta, ¿no? Imagine if I prayed that much. Imagine if I help other people that much. Imagine if I learn how to invest that much. Imagine if I use that time to open a business. Like, so many good things that we can do. And one of my fears is that we live in a generation that everything that we can do, everything that we can happen, we could have done if we spent that time, and instead of on our phone, reading a book, right? Like, I noticed that there's different moments during my day that I use my phone. So what I have done is I start putting books around the house, right? Tengo un libro en la cocina, tengo un libro aquí, tengo un libro allá, un libro para cuando vaya al baño, right? Because I don't want to be in the toilet in my cell phone. If I can just read a book through those moments, if I can just read a book when I'm waiting for my food to be cooked, if I can just read a book in mi sala en vez de Netflix, you know, my life can change. And, you know, reading, we know that it's good for all of us, but we don't do it, ¿verdad? So, uno de mis miedos es que estamos frente a la generación que pudiera cambiar el mundo, pero no lo va a hacer because they are busy in their phones. That's scary. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I catch myself realizing that I live for short little moments of a good feeling rather than thinking long term. And if I were to invest my time into something that is going to help me out or que me dé fruto in the long run, I think I would use my phone a lot less than I do right now. I feel like a lot of young people don't really look into like investing and things like that, you know, investing in stock market or investing in anything. Because si tenemos, I don't know, los $1,000 en el banco ahorita me puedo comprar un par de zapatos bien chidos porque están de moda esta semana y me voy a ver bien ahorita, instead of investing that money into something that's going to help me out in the future. And that's the way that I look at my phone, because my phone is, you know, social media and everything that I look at online is just así, pasa una cosa y rapidito se acaba y viene la otra. It's all trends. It's all fast, very fast paced. Si tomara mi tiempo, leyendo un libro or educating myself into something that, education is something que nunca nadie me va a poder quitar. And, education isn't trendy. No es un momento, it's something that's going to stick with me forever. So if I were to invest my time into something like educating myself through a book rather than spending my time living a moment on social media, I think I would be on my phone a lot less than I am now. It's not just me, it's all of us, and it's not just you, it's also me, All of us have gone through it, all of us do it. I will admit that I very much am addicted to not just social media, but just all forms of technology. During the early 2020, a friend of mine brought up this book that he wanted to read about the fasting from technology. And I was like, okay, that's not really that big of a deal, but I did it. And for 30 days, I turned off all my notifications on my phone. I deleted all social media apps and I just kept my email and text messages. That's the only thing I kept. And drastically in those 30 days, I did so much. And at first I didn't, because at first half the battle is deleting all my social media apps and not using my phone as much as I did. But the other half was investing, like Diana said, investing the time in something that mattered. And I remember my friend told me, he's like, there's no point in you not being hooked and glued to your phone if you're not doing something productive with the time. And I was like, oh, you've made a good point there, sir. And I remember after those 30 days, to this day, I use social media. Obviously now I have all my apps, but I don't use it, I feel, as much as I did, because those 30 days really were a true wake-up call to how hooked I was. So now, I go on my social media apps, but I don't use them as much because those 30 days scared me, because I realized how invested I was in something that doesn't matter. Porque para mí yo decía, ok, voy a ir a correr 2 millas hoy, y luego cuando estaba corriendo tenía que tomar una pausa para tomar una foto de que estaba corriendo, porque si no lo vio la comadre, no sirve de nada. And that's scary. I'm like, what is the point of me being so hooked to a device and it's not doing anything? And I feel like I was not living my life to the fullest because that phone was holding me back, and it still does it to this day. It's very hard, especially, I get it. After 2020, I think a lot of people had to adapt on how to use technology, because we realized that technology really is super useful. It helped us get through a really tough year in many ways. But again, that is a reason why we use technology. It shouldn't be an excuse. And I think that's something I wanted to mention earlier. People will tell you, if you tell someone, why are you putting excuses? If I look at myself in the mirror and say, Leslie, why are you putting so many excuses up? I'm going to tell you it's not excuses, it's a reason. But there's a difference. The reason we were using technology so much and we use it so much is because it helps us. Yes, but that reason shouldn't be the excuse that you put for holding yourself back. And I think that if I did it last year, I want to do it again. I want to really keep challenging myself to cut back on the use of technology and really put my phone down and, enjoy the moments that I'm living.
This year, I started the year off with a phone cleanse. Like I mentioned earlier, I did Exodus 90, right, starting in January, and it went until April. We had to delete all social media and also YouTube. And for me, social media wasn't really a problem, because all I had been using for the last about a year and a half was Snapchat. Although even that I wasted a lot of time on, but for me it was YouTube. Because I wasn't scrolling on Facebook and Instagram, I was watching YouTube videos all day. Whenever I was home doing nothing, let me watch this 10-minute video. And then another one. And 2 hours would pass by and I just watched a video on how Starbucks became a $10 billion corporation. And I could tell you the history of Starbucks now, but does that really matter? No, it's stuff that I was just wasting time on. So during Exodus 90, when I had to delete everything, I remember kind of being mad, because I'm like, well, what do I want my phone for now? No me sirve de nada. A couple texts, a couple phone calls, but this thing is useless now. I remember being I just spent $1,000 on this new phone. Now I can't really use it for anything. I remember being mad the first week because I just couldn't do anything. And then eventually I got over it, right? And then I told myself, well, part of the Exodus was that, okay, you're going to not use your phone, but you're going to do something productive. So I had to do something. So I read 3 books in the first month alone, right? And I was I would have never read these if I hadn't been not able to do all the stuff on my phone. And it was great. The first 2 months that we were doing Exodus 90 was awesome. I I went on my phone to check the time, to send a text, to make a call that I had to make. And that was it. My screen time was down to like an hour, from 6.5, 7 hours a day down to 1. I didn't even know that I used it 6.5 hours until because one of the guys was like, hey, check how much your time has gone down. And I checked and I was like, well, I'm like an hour or something a day. He's like, what did it used to be at? And I was like, I don't know. He's like, check and you can go back. And I was like, oh, like it's dropped like 5 hours a day. And now I'm either I'm reading a book or I'm talking to a friend or I'm doing something. I'm cleaning my room, stuff that we should be doing.
Tendiendo mi cama.
Yeah, I think it's hard, and like our society is. I feel like you're not a part of society if you don't have a phone, right? And that's why little kids are like, I have to have a cell phone. They want a cell phone when they're 10, 11, 12 years old because they want to be like everybody else. I feel like once you have that, then you're hooked. Like I think the important thing is that you need to be able to control it and be able to use it for what's necessary. Like you said, the time that you're not going to waste on there, do something productive. Read a book, clean your room, go for a run, do something.
Cuando Dios borra algo de tu vida, no es porque quiere escribir lo mismo, ¿verdad? Es porque quiere escribir algo nuevo. Pues, para terminar, me gustaría just go around en algunas palabras de aliento para todas las personas que nos están escuchando al comenzar este año, de cómo comenzar un año balanceado con metas que hay que lograr sin tener excusas, metas no solamente físicas, metas espirituales, cómo hacer mejor uso del teléfono y de la tecnología, ¿verdad? No decir, no, pues voy a tener un mes sin social media, pero cuando regrese voy a recuperar el tiempo perdido, ¿no? Sino cómo convertirnos en personas balanceadas, tener metas, lograrlas, entender si un día estás enfermo, no ir a correr, pero no confundir una razón con una excusa. Just few words of encouragement y vamos en orden a todas las personas que nos están escuchando y pues irnos despidiendo de ellos, agradeciéndoles que han estado presentes con nosotros, muchachos y muchachos. Dayana.
Well, first of all, para los que no sepan, I actually edit the episodes, and it's been very, very fun to be a part of the process behind the scenes. And we all get very excited every time that we see that there's a new download. So thank you, everybody, for being with us this long. And we hope that you guys stick around way longer. Y que les alegramos poquito el día, seeing our faces, hearing our voices. I just want to say that it has been a very different, and I could probably say it's been a hard year for all of us in different aspects. And don't overwhelm yourself with trying to make up everything that you didn't do in 2020 all at once in 2021. Vamos a querer empezar el año así como avientándonos a cualquier meta, a todos, nos vamos a poner muchos retos. We're going to try to just achieve everything that we want as soon as the year starts. You have 365 days and they're not going anywhere. Take your time with your goals. Set realistic goals for yourself. Si te pones metas chiquitas, pero prácticas, cosas que sabes que de veras puedes obtener in a reasonable amount of time, you won't be discouraged when you don't actually meet your goals. Be intentional with what you want. I think that's something else that I really want to work on this year. Just be very intentional about what I do. 2020 made me realize a lot about myself, and it opened up my eyes to different areas of myself that I had been ignoring for so long. And now that I have a clear shot of what I need to work on, work on that.
Yeah, I think this year did an excellent job of showing us what isn't necessary in our life. All the filler that we have, like all the stuff that we thought we needed, that once it was taken away, we're like, oh, well, I don't really miss it. I don't really need that. Like I was doing that because it was there and because it was cool and that's what everybody else was doing. But it's not necessary for me to be happy. And I think that coming into this new year, that's something that I'm going to make sure that I keep in my mind at all times, right? Like making sure, like you said, Diana, setting realistic goals that I know I can obtain. Last week when I was wasting time on my phone, I was watching this YouTuber. He runs like a men's channel, right? And like inspiration and workout and all that kind of stuff. And he was talking about like how you can change your life in just 1 week. And like every day you're going to add one tiny thing. Like he was like, Monday, you're going to wake up at 7. If you normally wake up at 8, wake up at 7 that one day. And then you do it. And then you do that every day for the whole week. But Tuesday you add something else. Tuesday you're going to read a book for 10 minutes. And you do that the rest of the week. I think if you do things that are that easy, where you're like, there's no way I can mess this goal up because it's that easy, then that's how you really start to make change, right? And then once you're able to do the easy things, then you're able to jump. Okay, now I'm going to do something that, like you said, 50-50. Like I could mess it up, but I could also nail it. But I've been doing all these other things over 100 and I've been good so far. So now I can do something a little harder. Going into this new year, setting goals that are realistic, giving yourself enough time, and surrounding yourself with people that are going to help you get there is super important. It's super, super crucial to make sure that we move forward, right, as a society, and just got to start with yourself.
I think we all have the tendency of thinking that the only time that I am allowed to set goals for myself is on January 1st. And after that, like everything that I wrote down, everything that I thought of is set in stone. And that's it. I'm starting here on January 1st and I am ending in this point on December 31st. A year should not be a thing that's from point A to point B. A year is point A to point Z. Like there's a B, C, D, like all the letters are in there. And there are different types of goals. And you are not supposed to write all like 26 of them in one day. Write yourself, like Jay mentioned, like get yourself 1-2 goals. And then once you accomplish those, move on to the next. But most importantly, also be aware that you're probably going to fail at one point. And maybe it's not because like you totally suck and you're like the worst person ever and you should throw that goal away because you can't obtain it. Maybe that goal that you set for yourself is the goal like the letter N and you're barely like on F. Like, no, you got to go in an order and you got to start small. Don't be discouraged, really keep going. And I truly appreciate everyone that takes the time to listen to these podcasts. And I really hope that this one specifically can really help you like jumpstart your year. I know 2020 was a rough patch for so many of us in many different ways, but you know, you think of it not like a fresh start, but maybe just like a breath of fresh air. 2020 gave us a very long pause that we had to like really reevaluate life, and maybe hopefully, God please, I hope we don't need another 4-month kind of pause, but maybe it does not take 4 months, just one day, 1 hour of you just really stopping to reevaluate where you're at and where you're going. Like I said, A and B is not a thing, it's A to Z. So take that time that when you need it to say, I accomplished this, now what is next? Don't be afraid to give yourself that time.
Your life, tu vida no cambia con intenciones. Tu vida cambia con decisiones. At the moment you start making better decisions, your life will be better. If you have the intention, but you have no decision to back that intention up, you're the same person. So, enfócate en que este año tomes mejores decisiones. Y si no sabes cómo tomar mejores decisiones, equip yourself to take better decisions. You know, what do you need to do? You need to read. You need motivation. What is it that you need? What is it that you need to take better decisions? Take better decisions, because if you take better decisions, is the one power we have. We have the power of decision. And that can really transform our life. And my other thing is, be really careful que te conviertas en Miss Espero o Mr. Pero. Miss Excusa o Mr. Excusa. Las excusas de verdad nos pueden destruir la vida. Because we can literally have an excuse for anything. Podemos tener excusa para cualquier cosa y eso es un peligro. Preocúpate en que este año no te conviertas en Mr. Excusa, Mr. Excusa. Puedes lograr lo que quieras. Atrévete a soñar, atrévete a cambiar, atrévete a tratar cosas nuevas, atrévete a soñar, atrévete a reinventarte, atrévete a ser una persona diferente. El poder de cambio está en ti. Solamente es que tú te lo creas. Así que ojalá y este año 2021 sea un año lleno de bendiciones, lleno de nuevas y mejores decisiones y con menos excusas. Muchas gracias por escuchar este podcast, su podcast, el podcast de la alegría del evangelio. No olviden compartir este episodio con las personas que creen que les puedan ayudar. No olviden seguirnos en Instagram, en Facebook, porque creemos que eso sí sería un buen uso de su social media.
Oh, sí.
Thank you. Y gracias por atreverse a experimentar la alegría del evangelio.
Thank you, guys. See you next
Okay,
time.
everyone. Happy 2021.
Listen with us and experience the joy of the gospel.
Escúchanos y experimenta la alegría del evangelio. Te esperamos.
Dare to dream.
Atrévete a soñar.